In episode number 390 of the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, we cover the recent delay to James Bond No Time to Die.
We also have the reveal of the new Batman film's Batmobile.
Our comic book highlight this week, as voted by you, is Strange Adventures number 1 of 12.
All of this and so much more on today's show.
Hello and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week, ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I am Aroma Lady Daniel.
Selling your perfumes. And I am your Emperor Kelli.
For those of you new to the show, the way we format it is first we go through some news. We head into our Patreon shoutouts, which are thank yous to everyone who make the show possible. Then we go into our comic book review, which is Strange Adventures number 1. And we end it with the Brokehead Block, which is what Kelli and I have been doing this week.
Our first bit of news comes from the big screen, though. Live-action Mulan movie producer Jason Reed explained why Li Shang was not included in this remake.
Along with Mushu, which a lot of people wanted in the movie, he's not in there. And now Li Shang is being revealed as no longer in the film, or at least not in this remake of the movie. The quote here reads, quote, "We split Li Shang into two characters. One became Commander Tung, who serves as her surrogate father and mentor in the course of the movie. The other is Hong Hui, who is Mulan's equal in the squad, and this was through an interview with Collider. I think particularly in the time of the Me Too movement, having a commanding officer that is also the sexual love interest was very uncomfortable, and we didn't think it was appropriate," end quote.
Do you have thoughts on this?
I heard the obvious solution on Twitter, which was to keep Li Shang and just make him a regular commanding officer or someone equal to her ranking, and that solves the problem right there. Having him be the commanding officer is not, I don't think, imperative to the character himself. And I get that he's the son of the Emperor, and that might make for some interesting...
Other guy?
Not the Emperor?
No, he's not the son of the Emperor. Remember that guy, like that big guy? The big army man, and he rides off in the very beginning, and he's like, "You're in charge, bye."
Yes.
That's his dad.
Okay, so was he a coward?
Yeah, oh my god, you've missed so much of this movie. That's why when they go to the city and it's burned down, he takes it so hard because they find his dad's helmet. His dad was murdered by the Huns.
Oh, so he was not a coward.
Who, his dad? No. Yeah. He went off to go stop them in the Tung Shao Pass, and then what's his name showed up anyway and killed them all, and then they found his helmet, and then he was all sad.
Mm-hmm. So maybe it would have been better, or you can still make him the son of that general, right?
And then that's why he doesn't kill Mulan, because she's like, I did it to save my father. It was the only way. And he had just lost his dad. So he's like, man, if I could have dressed up as a woman to save my dad, I would have done it too.
Right. So what do you think about this? Do you think that
I'm so baffled that you missed so much of this movie. I have mixed feelings. I see why it could make some people uncomfortable if he was a commanding officer, but that was the whole appeal. It was so hot. The Me Too movement's gonna come after me right now. No, Kelli, it's not. I don't know. I thought it made him more attractive. But...
I think there's enough woke points already with Mulan making it that I think they would have been fine with a commanding officer. I didn't even think about that problem.
And it's all in how they would have presented it, right? Okay, if he just happens to be a commanding officer and they happen to meet and they happen to fall in love, cool. I don't think he'd be forcing himself on this woman who he really thinks is a man to try and do whatever. I will say I do kind of like the twist, though, that the commanding officer serves as a father figure for her, because she obviously ran away from home, right? She feels like her father, her actual father, supposedly, I'm pulling from like the previous movie, right? The animated, but, feels that she's dishonoring the family and doesn't quite fit in. So for her to have that father figure, I think is cool. But I don't know. It could have just been Li Shang. They could have fallen in love. It would have been fine.
So I'm thinking that there is no love interest at all in this one. I think it's going to follow that kind of pattern that we've seen with the newer Disney princesses where there isn't a love interest.
Because they said they split it into two parts. So you have the father figure, but then you also have the person who's on the same level as her. So is she going to fall in love with him?
Is that an existing character, the Hang Hui?
No.
Okay, so that's an original one. And same, what about Commander Tung? That one was
original.
Okay. And they can still even do a thing where at the end, maybe they give a nod to, at the end, maybe they do present Li Shang as, oh, and this is my son. And from there, you could sort of force it in, but I don't think it's going to be as effective as in the animated movie where she was impressing him and he was like, oh, I think I'm bi, like by the end of it,
I think I'm gay. That's definitely what happened. I'm so conflicted with this movie because part of me really wants to see it and the other part of me is very mad at Disney and what they're doing and I want to boycott them.
Do you want to go see Mulan? I'm okay skipping it because of everything that has happened in China with the leading actor and everything.
Yeah, I know.
But I'll see it if you want to. You've seen plenty over mine.
I'm so conflicted because, morally, I feel like I shouldn't because Disney's being assholes and all these other things. But at the same time, I'm like, Mulan, she brings honor to us all.
When is this supposed to come out?
The live action Mulan is set to release March 27th of this year, so about 3 weeks away.
Our next movie on our watch list is The Way Back starring Ben Affleck. We have our tickets. We can't wait. But after that, I was actually going to buy my tickets this morning because they had gone on sale. They're probably down now. But that was for James Bond, No Time to Die. And as you heard in the opening, MGM and Universal have delayed the film all the way down to November 12th. Oof.
We do have a quote here from the @007 Twitter who said, quote, MGM, Universal, and Bond producers Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli announced today that after careful consideration and through evaluation of the global theatrical marketplace, the release of No Time to Die will be postponed until November 2020, end quote.
So they're afraid that the coronavirus, and it is doing it, they're keeping people from going out to the movie theaters or any public places like conventions, which we'll talk about in a minute. And one of those things is, since this is coming out in April, there's a lot of uncertainty as to how much this will be widespread throughout the U.S. by the time we get into April. And I'm just thinking as I'm saying this, that in 10 years, this is really going to date this episode because they'll be like, oh, yeah, remember that coronavirus thing?
The what virus?
It's like the equivalent of worrying about Y2K. Imagine if we had recorded that episode. You know what I mean? Like, it's an absolutely 2000s thing.
Guys, this will be our last episode because of Y2K. It's going to wipe everything out.
We're going to play out with Savage Garden. But yeah, they're afraid of ticket sales, and those ticket sales, everything coming out from here until the summer, or at least until we know what's going to happen with the disease here in the U.S., is going to be affected. Ticket sales are going to go down. I imagine I was telling you that The Way Back, that theater is probably going to be empty when we go, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Sounds sexy. That'll be a good time.
This is another one with MGM and Universal with James Bond. Already a franchise that has gone through many delays, many rewrites, and a lot of worry over the future of the franchise itself. I don't think they want to take any risk with No Time to Die.
I don't blame them. And realistically, how much does this hurt them by putting it back? Probably not, because, yeah, we're going to push back into November. This will all blow over. It'll be, people will be going out and about again because they won't be terrified to leave their homes. And potentially they're going to make more money than if they had released it when they were set to.
Some are speculating whether or not there's now going to be some time for reshoots, or if maybe there was already kind of a rush production and this kind of gives them a break to really take their time with this Bond 25. And I hope that the end product ends up being better because of all of this. I was really excited to see this in April, but I totally get it. The bottom line is very important. And if it's a good film, it won't matter whether I see it in November or April, as long as I can still enjoy it many years after it releases. And I'm hoping that this one is that for us, since supposedly this is, yet again, Daniel Craig's last Bond film.
Yet again.
Moving on over to the potentially television side of things, a fan on Twitter asked William Shatner if there were any plans to do a Picard-style spin-off show with Captain Kirk.
Shatner responded with, quote, "No. I think Kirk's story is pretty well played out at this point," end quote.
When asked if he'd do a cameo on any Star Trek series, he tweeted back, quote, "I don't do cameos. It's a throwaway part to sell DVDs," end quote.
DVDs, William Shatner. DVDs.
At least we know it's him now on Twitter.
Can you,
not a...
He might as well have just said, VHSs.
I would have been fine with it. Although if they said VHS, I would then think it wasn't Shatner. I'm like, someone's trying too hard to sound like Shatner.
Right.
I mean, the guy's in his 80s now, right? He's up there in age. I don't know if... Well, so is, I guess... Sir Patrick Stewart as well.
Yeah, he's 79, Sir Patrick Stewart. Because I looked it up after I watched the first episode of Picard. I'm like, how old is this man running around doing this shit? I think, first of all, that Shatner is upset because he wasn't asked to have his own show and bring it back. But second, I don't think there's as much depth to the character of Kirk as there is to Picard. So yeah, it wouldn't be to the same level that Picard is.
And unless they retcon this in some way, maybe a bigger Star Trek fan can let me know, but I remember him dying in Next Generation, or at least in one of the films, and they kind of gave him a good send-off, or I guess a decent one, where his last words are, "Oh my," and then he passes on right next to Picard. So his story, as he said, I think is finished, and since he is getting up there in age, I think Shatner is just concerned with doing those television specials that they sometimes ask him to do, those documentaries.
To sell some DVDs.
VHSs, right? And to do the convention circuit. He makes a lot of money off of those photo ops. He travels with other Star Trek members, whether or not they're from the original series or not. You'll see him at MegaCon next month. And there's other people from Next Gen that are going to be there along with Shatner. So that's really, I think, his bread and butter until he eventually completely retires or passes away.
If any of you haven't been watching Picard and you are a fan of Star Trek, I think it's definitely something that you should jump on board with. I know you haven't had the opportunity to watch it yet, but my mom is obsessed. She also doesn't grasp the concept of she can't just binge it, it's only one episode a week. And she's like, but it's through the streaming app. Can I just watch them all? And I'm like, but they only release one a week, Mom. So every Thursday, the whole family has to sit down and watch them. And it's a really well put together show. And I think a great kind of love letter to the next generation, to Picard himself.
I think that's a good sign of the show just being solid, at least for your mom to really enjoy it that much, where she does want to binge it. She wants another episode. And this sort of release keeps more subscribers on CBS All Access as well. If they do a binging thing, yeah, they would not have these same subscription numbers at this time of the year. Moving forward with something that is confirmed for Kelli.
I'm so happy.
TV Line is reporting that co-showrunners Heidi Moderich and Joe Henderson have signed deals for a sixth season of Lucifer.
My God has answered my prayers. Star Tom Ellis, who plays Lucifer, has also finalized negotiations to appear for season 6 as well. That man loves being Lucifer. Absolutely loves it.
That bit was up in the air when I was doing these show notes, and then I think yesterday or today, they finally figured out a deal to get him to come back. You can't do the show without him.
Of course
not. And I'm glad they were able to figure it out.
If they hadn't gotten him, there would not be a season 6.
No, not at all.
There's absolutely no way that you can do it with it. Unless they put Constantine in it, then I would watch it.
Oh, that's true. You can fucking replace him real quick. Still call it Lucifer.
You can't replace him.
I just want another Constantine show. I don't care if you replace Lucifer or anything else out there.
I do too. I'm so excited. I'm so happy that season 5 hasn't released yet, and there's already so much hype. I want to say Lucifer for a long time was one of the most binge shows on Netflix too. I don't know if it's still like in the top 10, but for a really long time it was. And it's so excited. Already greenlit for a 6th. Like, yeah, just keep it going. It's those 1 million moms.
It is. They're doing it. Over to the big screen, the Batman co-writer / director Matt Reeves has shared set photos from the film showcasing a full look at the Batmobile suit and this film's Batmobile.
It's so cool that they made the Batmobile out of Joe Chill's guns.
I saw that joke on Twitter.
People, I thought it looked fine. The Batmobile looks like just a regular old car that he just added stuff to make it look cool.
It probably is the most different Batmobile that we've gotten since the Batman 66 show. So I think it's yet another connection to the Adam West series. We were talking about the cowl a few weeks back and how it does have that stitching pattern, which reminds me of Adam West's. And then now the Batmobile looks more like a regular car that was souped up, as opposed to like the Tim Burton one, which was a little bit more fantasy. And then more recently, we've had the couple of tanks with not only the Nolanverse, but also with the Snyderverse.
I feel like this just kind of further solidifies in my mind that this is going to be very much like a year one story. So it's his first Batmobile that he's put together. It's his first costume that he and Alfred have worked on together. So all those really smooth pieces that we've gotten used to haven't been finalized yet. He hasn't gotten to that point.
People were quick to point out that this is based on an, I want to say, Raphael Albuquerque piece called 1972, in which it is like a Dodge Charger that got modified into being a Batmobile. And they're saying that that's where a lot of this inspiration is coming from. I'm also going to say, and we don't know any plot details, but if this ends up being Aronofsky's pitch that now belongs to Warner Brothers being reworked into Matt Reeves's, that would make me upset because I know Aronofsky could do this all better. As good of a director as Matt Reeves is, Aronofsky is prime. Do you remember that premise?
I do vaguely. It was where Batman like worked at an auto shop, right? With his 2 gay uncles?
No, it wasn't that. Alfred is a mechanic along with Bruce, and they own that mechanic shop. And I believe it is the same where his parents do pass on, but he ends up inheriting the shop. They're not rich, they're not millionaires, but they end up using their skills to make this Batmobile and to fight crime in Gotham.
I really don't think that's what it's going to be. I know you're holding out hope because you want to see something of Aronofsky's on the screen, but I really don't think that's what it is.
And I'd be upset at the same time.
I know you
right?
would. Like, you'd be both happy and sad.
My main thing about when I look at the Batman suit next to the Batmobile, they don't look like they fit in that same universe. I don't know if because you see Batman right next to it, this version of it, and that does look more like an Arkham-ish Batman as opposed to what we've gotten recently, which is a more comic-accurate Batman with Batfleck. But then next to that vehicle, I feel like it should be an even more cloth and leather look if you're going to go with that car right there. More of even Albuquerque's designs or Lee Bermejo's that would fit with this car Dodger. That Batman looks like he would have something closer to the Arkham games or even the recent Batman films with this suit. So that's my main thing. And I don't know if it'll look better in motion or not, but to me, those designs don't fit.
I'm going to hold out until we see, I think, better pictures of them. I feel like all the pictures I've seen are still really dark. And I haven't done the legwork to go and find somebody who's lighting them up to really sit there and look at it. But of course, everything looks different in post-production.
Yeah.
Always. So I'm still going to hold out hope that, you know, this is their vision, that they're going to go well together, because I don't think they would make two things that look so vastly different and nobody on the set would be like,
right.
Sorry, guys. Like, there's so many eyes and thoughts that go into all these things that happen in the movies that it would be really difficult to get that past everyone.
And you're spot on with that post-production or behind-the-scenes pictures, because you could even look at the photos that we got from the Nolan trilogy or from Zack Snyder's films, and anytime it's a stuntman in the Batman suit, it never looks right. And then you look at it on the big screen and it looks perfect, right? So I think that's the case with this one, and this kind of did change my mind a bit on the Batman ears, because on these set photos next to that Charger, the silhouette of Batman does look spot on. I do like I think the ears are fine now that you actually look at them and you can see them, and it's not on a stunt guy. I still think the Bat Cycle, I don't like it, But that's another case of maybe once we get an official look, they'll have it on the proper lighting. It'll look right. Then it won't just be daylight, whatever. Did you see the clip of a stunt guy falling on the motorcycle?
No.
Yeah, that was one where it's like Warner Brothers was quickly taking all of those clips down. And I guess you were just allowed to film out there on the street as they were filming Batman, and they got all that footage. I will applaud them again for going with something more, I guess, familiar to the 66 fans or to these Albuquerque fans, and instead of trying to replicate too much of what just came before it. And I think with this, they're really saying that this is a complete, to anyone in doubt, this is a reboot of the Batman and does not fit in Snyder's DCEU. As much as they want to call it the DCEU, that's not what I think of anymore.
We will see it all, the final vision, the post-production, everything, June 25th, 2021.
Some more movie news here with Superman Red Son. A lot of you may have seen it. We're still waiting for our Blu-ray copy of this. I can't wait. We'll have a review here on the show. But due to health and welfare of the talent who worked on Superman Red Son, Warner Brothers has canceled the New York premiere that was set to take place here in the U.S. because of, once again, the fear of impact of the coronavirus.
DC Comics have also canceled their appearance at Emerald City Comic-Con and all conventions in March.
A DC spokesperson said, quote, "As the health and safety of our employees are always our primary concerns, DC staffers will not be attending conventions during the month of March," end quote.
This is not out of the norm. A lot of big companies have canceled all travel for the foreseeable future, telling their employees like, hey, stay where you are, right? Viruses like this spread quickly. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And very honestly, I think it's an overreaction to this particular virus. But I understand people wanting to be cautious, and I understand companies wanting to take care of their employees. So while it sucks, I get it.
We'll know in the next couple of weeks how this affects MegaCon. I'm set to go to the Retailer Summit, and I was getting really excited for it, but it sounds like I'm not getting my hopes up anymore. Mm-hmm. I fully expect these companies to fully pull out, all the publishers to pull out of MegaCon, since that one is, or I guess that one is in May, I think. Might be April. If it's in April, I think they're canceling. If it's in May, we might have a chance.
The biggest thing with this virus, wash your hands.
That's really it.
Don't sneeze on people, wash your hands. Go by what the CDC is telling you, and right now it's very easily killed as long as you wash your hands.
Mm-hmm. Some comic book news moving ahead with Curse of the White Knight. Writer/artist Sean Murphy has announced that DC Comics has greenlit several comic book spin-offs from his White Knight universe, aka the Murphyverse.
He said, quote, "DC wants a mini imprint of White Knight. I'll write the bones for the new minis, and they'll set up the writer/artist team. It'll be done between new volumes of Batman White Knight. It'll be the Murphyverse. Stay tuned for books on Harley, Nightwing, and Batgirl," end quote.
And why not expand on this successful universe?
Of course.
I love all of the Easter eggs that he's put in the background. He's done a ton of Tim Burton, Batman the Animated Series. He's even worked in the line of Let's Get Nuts into comics where it's not cheesy, it's not weird, it's not out of place. It fits in the story.
It was none of those things in the movie either.
That's true. Like Bruce Wayne loses his fucking shit. I love that Jack Nicholson's like, this guy's insane. Let me fucking just fire.
I'm not gonna fuck around with this guy anymore.
Because he does look legitimately scared. I thought that was a great scene. But with this, I think that the Harley book is the one I'm most excited for. Mm-hmm. Whether it's the older version of Harley, which is the one that Batman seems to be coupling up with, or this insane Neo Joker version, which is kind of like the more modern Harley Quinn that most people I think are used to. I think it'll give us a lot of answers to this background, probably some Poison Ivy in that title. Not so much on Nightwing or Batgirl. I think I'm going to pass on those, especially since they're so involved with the GCPD. Mm-hmm. And to me, I haven't connected to those characters in this universe
because they're just being whiny.
But if they give me like a prequel with Gordon or Alfred, or even a solo Joker one, I think that'll be good. But with him kind of setting these up himself, Sean Murphy, I think that'll lead to the success of these spinoffs.
There's 100%, like, so many things he could do. So many. Like, characters we haven't even seen. He could be like, what are they doing while all this is going on, right? And just run with it and just take all our money.
Right now, Curse of the White Knight number 8 is set to release on March 25th.
Some more DC news. Chief Creative Officer Jim Lee indicated at C2E2 that DC Comics will not be replacing former co-publisher Dan DiDio.
Finally, put these rumors to rest, man. I was getting asked at the store and on Twitter and on Instagram.
Why are they asking you?
Well, because I'm such a DC guy, right?
Okay,
so they're like, not so much that like if I have insider info or anything, but more like they wanted my reaction to this fear mongering that people like Ethan Van Sciver were putting out there, and like AT&T is gonna sell off the DC publishing firm and the line of comics if this 5G plan doesn't go through. Jim Lee was very quick, right, on C2E2. I don't know if someone asked him or if he just brought it up, but the quote here is, quote, "We've been with Warner Brothers for decades. The actual strategy for DC is to put publishing at center of what we do. It's the engine of all the movies, TV, cartoons that we do. And so it's my intent going forward as the publisher to lean into the collective years of my team to address some of the stuff that is out there. There's rumors, speculation. I wouldn't put any credence into it. DC has been around for 85 years and will be around for another 85 years. I hope to be doing this panel in 85 years." End quote. So do I, Jim.
How old would he be in 85 years? He'd just be a head in a jar.
As long as he's still drawing. I want those Jim Lee variants. They're amazing.
So pretty much the things to unpack here. They're not selling, right? AT&T is not shutting down the DC Comics portion. And additionally, Jim Lee's just going to be running it all.
That was one of the things that became kind of like, oh, why do we fucking not think this, right? Where we assumed that Jim Lee would have another person or another partner there with him. And the way these things went about is Dan DiDio was the sole publisher. Then his responsibilities were kind of cut in half when they moved Jim Lee up in this company, I think it was last year. And now they've completely given it to Jim Lee. So it almost seems like it was a transition period between these two, as opposed to like a, I guess, sudden firing where they wanted someone instead of Dan.
How is Jim Lee living the dream? Like, just started as an artist, and now here he is. Started from the bottom, now he's here.
That's right. Yeah, he talks on Twitter about, or on Instagram about how he, he takes a lot of pitches now at conventions, but he used to get his work out there and really get out in front of people. He was one of the heads of Image Comics at one point, and he took Wildcats and everything else with him to DC Comics and eventually got a huge deal for those properties and to be a part of DC exclusively. And now many years later, he is now the sole publisher of these books. And I was telling a subscriber earlier today that whatever 5G ends up being, I think that the event after 5G is going to be more or less what he wants to do. Whereas this right now is kind of like that transitional, like, all right, we need to move things along. We need to get rid of this and not make that. But we also still need to move forward with what we were already planning. There's already all these plots that were being put together that are being written right now. So we'll more or less just let them know that these plans don't really affect it as much as they initially were thinking under Dan DiDio.
Well, we're still sad to see Dan DiDio go. I'm so happy for Jim Lee. Everything that I've heard about him, I really like the guy.
Some of the concerns I have seen is that people are saying he's an amazing artist, right? But he is not known for his writing. So for him to be plotting out the DC universe as a full vision, they're kind of worried that he might not be the right person for that. And I don't know what he's done so far since he got that co-publisher position, but I would be interested to know what parts were his and what parts were DiDio's, just to see if his mind is in the right place, or if the things that he was pushing for ended up being successful in the year and a half or so that he's been there in this head position at least.
So in this position, does he really have like absolute control of this is where we're going? Or is he kind of like, hey, like, here's my vision. And then like other writers can come in and be like, why don't we tweak it a little bit?
I think it depends on how he wants to run it. From what I understand, the deal was very micromanaging a lot of this. So he wanted things to fit a certain way. And he often butted heads with writers and editorial. And it worked out with New 52, it worked out with Rebirth, and it probably would have worked out just fine with 5G as well. But that's one thing where he had a more focused vision,
Right.
and he tried to keep all these parts in that vision, which a lot of people would say that's great because you have direction, right? And others would say, no, you want to give writers and artists a little bit of more freedom than what they wanted with the Dio. And I still think the Dio was doing fine. We know with Rebirth and New 52, those were successes. The DC Black Label line has done amazing. So I'm curious to see, yeah, I think that's what it is. It's up to Jim Lee on how much reign he gives these teams.
We're, of course, still on board. We will find out as we move forward and, of course, let you know here on the show.
That does wrap up our portion of the news for this week. Let's head into our thank yous to those who make the show possible every week, our Patreon shout-outs.
This week we have 4 shout-outs. The first one goes out to Kat, whose Instagram is at Happy Little Wings Photo.
Kat recently posted her latest wedding photography images.
They're beautiful.
I believe she is Georgia-based, so if you're a brokehead out there looking for a photographer, make sure to check her out on Instagram at Happy Little Wings Photo.
Up next, we have Matt, whose Twitter handle is at Mr. Forklift. You can also find him at typingaboutmovies.com.
Matt has been sharing some solid space exploration and NASA links and articles on his Twitter. National Geographic is another one that he shares often on Twitter. So if you want to expand your mind and work that brain, make sure to follow Matt on Twitter at Mr. Forklift.
I love space. Space is like my favorite thing.
Which planet in our solar system would you
Pluto.
visit? Cold-ass Pluto. Little
Yes.
Pluto. That's not a planet.
Because Pluto needs love.
It's not a planet. Are you going to visit all those other little planetoids as well that fit under that category?
No, just Pluto, because for years, Pluto was one of the gang, and now we've just decided Pluto can't be part of our club anymore.
No, we found out that he was undercover and not really a part of the gang.
Then good for him. He did it for years, sneaky little bastard. What about you? Which one would you visit?
I'm going to say Neptune. As a kid, I always liked Neptune. I liked the color blue.
I mean-
and I think it was one of the bluest ones there.
I liked Sailor Neptune. She was my favorite Sailor Scout.
To be honest, though, probably Mars.
Pluto.
Like it's the closest one.
Pluto. It's cool. We can ride in that spaceship together.
Next shout out goes out to Jared on Twitter at Spoon Sandwich. You can also find them on youtube.com/Jared Monroe.
Jared tweeted, quote, Stop, I can't even read this. Shower thought. Start a business. Gender reveal parties. Not just for babies anymore. Hashtag 2020.
That's kind of brilliant. That would work.
That's terrible. I just took a class about why this is wrong.
Was this your woke class?
My woke class, my gender communications class, yes. I learned a lot. I learned a lot of things.
I mean,
I learned that we need to be more respectful and understanding of people's life choices.
well, why can't you have a gender reveal party for adults? Why does it have to be just for babies? They'd be remaking their baby gender reveal parties and doing it to the extent that they wish.
Well, I get that, but then you're kind of like mocking the process by doing that.
Well, that depends on how you do it. And if anything, you're mocking it for the babies, like not really for them.
I guess. I don't know. It's not going to go over. Try your best, but it's not.
It would depend on the name of the business. It would have to be the perfect one. Like it couldn't just be like some rhymey, anything. Because then, yeah, it'd be like hacky. But I think it could be done. I believe in Jared.
All right.
Final shout out this week goes out to Scott on Twitter at Lazy Gaming Guys and also on Twitter at Pandanime.
Scott has been streaming Mega Man Zero Collection.
That's on their Lazy Gaming Guys YouTube channel. They stream every single Wednesday night at about 10 Eastern time. So make sure to check them out because usually I'm in the chat along with other brokettes, and it's a solid YouTube.
I know you're there because I'm trying to sleep and you're just laughing.
That's true.
Just laying there laughing. So thank you so much, Scott, Jared, Matt, and Kat, for your Patreon support.
If you too would like to support the podcast, head on over to patreon.com/thereasonsimebroke. There's also a link in today's episode description. But for as little as $1 a month, you too can get your shout out.
Of course, our podcast is always free, though. Best thing you can do is let a friend know about us. If they're like, I'm interested in a podcast, be like, got the one for you.
In case you want to represent the Brokehead core, head on over to thereasonsimbroke.com, click on the pull-down menu, click on merch. We have all kinds of t-shirts, coffee mugs, buttons, pins, all kinds of designs, different colors, different sizes. We're that Brokehead core pride.
There's also baby clothes. Buy some babies some clothes. Leo wore his once, but I will keep it forever.
On to the comic book highlight this week, as voted by you. We have Strange Adventures #1.
This is written by Tom King with art by Mitch Gerrits and Evan Shaner.
This is a #1 of 12, so we've got a maxi series here, very similar to Mr. Miracle, where it is a 12 issue and probably going to also end up getting at least nominated for an Eisner Award. We put this poll up on Twitter, and very quickly, all of you, it was actually close between this and Sonic the Hedgehog, but Strange Adventures ended up edging out Sonic the Hedgehog on this one. And I really wanted to review this a couple of weeks back, but I never got around to reading the digital copy. And honestly, I read more comfortably with the physical book anyway, so it ended up working out too, and everyone ended up voting for it. So this is it. Strange Adventures #1, very similar to Mr. Miracle. What are your thoughts?
A lot of Mr. Miracle vibes. If you liked Mr. Miracle, I think you'll really like this book as well. Same kind of pacing almost, the same kind of, he's being celebrated for all these things, and then now he's being drugged back down and saying, well, you did all these things, but they were wrong and they weren't good. And just kind of trying to, us as the audience try to unravel, okay, what did he really do? Because from all that we've seen thus far in this first episode, or this first issue, the things that he did were great. He was a hero, but now we're hearing, maybe he wasn't. Maybe he did some things that were really immoral and he shouldn't be celebrated for it, right? And then there's questions of, well, where's his daughter? Is his wife really there? I have that one. Who's this man at the end named Michael? I don't know who he is, but he's there.
In the back of the comic, King talks about the reason why he had two artists on this one, and we talked about that Mitch Gerrits joke a few episodes back, and he describes it as the story being told of when you tell others about yourself and then what others are saying about you. And you definitely see that parallel here because Doc Shaner, he does that kind of classical style that would have fit more of this Adam Strange, the older Mysteries in Space comic books, and that's the portion that he tells. So the adventures that Adam Strange went through. And then when you get into the real world, you get that grittier Mitch Gerrits style, which definitely fits this story or this portion of it as the media kind of takes Adam Strange for this and drags him through the mud and into these type of accusations. And now we're getting also these Heroes in Crisis vibes, which were also written by Tom King, of there's this mystery of, is this character really guilty of these things? And this is only the beginning of it. And I really liked it as well. You get a nice origin to him. He's telling the audience or whatever, or the creature, where he came from and how he developed into this futuristic universe or this off-planet universe that has all of these advanced weaponry and flight suits, really, is what he uses. And you get that in one page. So if you're at all confused about Adam Strange, you can kind of read that and it really catches you up.
Definitely agree. For going in knowing literally nothing about this character, they just set it up very well. They make it very easy to follow. I'm extremely invested in these characters. I don't know why there was a sex scene, but whatever. That was there.
Yeah, I think it's just I did parallel some of the family dynamics that he had back on that other planet.
But isn't this still his wife? That's his wife.
I think so, but it's also Tom King and Mitch going through parenthood as well in their real lives. So I know that there's Mitch draws his baby he drew his baby in Mr. Miracle.
How could he do that?
And they're taking a lot of their personal lives and working it into the characters.
But I couldn't see my baby because I would just cry.
Well, the baby never gets hurt in
That
Mr.
was
Miracle.
so intense. I was so worried. No. I'm having anxiety now just thinking about it.
That's kind of a cool gift, though. Once that kid gets old enough and it's like, look, you're in this comic. It won Eisner's.
I want the kid to be like, Dad, this wasn't very good.
I didn't get it. This book is definitely not for everyone, though. It's not your convention. It kind of fits in that Vertigo line, and this is a DC Black Label book, which tells you if you are at all an avid Black Label reader into Vertigo, Mr. Miracle, Heroes in Crisis, Watchmen, all of those fit that type of like genre of there's something more here. You can reread this many times over. You pick up more from each of the parallels, especially once this is all finished. And I think you said this when you were reading Mr. Miracle, where you want to take all 12 issues and read them back to front, because then you're kind of, all right, now I get where this is all going. Now we know where it's going to end. And I think it's going to be the case with Strange Adventures as well.
Definitely. Already, I think a great, and I don't know that I want to say reinvention of the character because I really knew nothing about him, but a great jumping on point if you know nothing about him.
Yep.
And you did enjoy Mr. Miracle, at least give the first issue a shot.
On the same day of Strange Adventures #1, they also released a Mysteries in Space facsimile, which I believe is the first appearance of Adam Strange. So if you're picking this up at your local comic shop, make sure to give that a flip through as well. It's an exact reprinting of that classic comic, including all of the ads.
But that does wrap up our comic book highlight for the week, and now we can move into the Brocat block, which is what happened with Daniel and I.
We did our What's New on Netflix last time, and one of the very first Pokemon Netflix exclusive got released this month with Pokemon the first movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution. It is a CGI remake of that classic 1996, I want to say 97 movie that we grew up on. And for the most part, it is almost an exact remake with an animation style that I think younger viewers are more used to thanks to the Pixar films.
Definitely. I think probably one of the biggest hangups for me in this movie was the animation style, because I do miss that 2D. I do miss the classic look of the characters. Everything felt much more vibrant when it was 2D than it did with the 3D, the CGI, whatever.
Yeah, I think the shadows were a little bit too heavy when they were especially on that island. When you get that beginning portion with Dragonite flying around and Bulbasaur and all them and fighting in daylight, I thought that looked pretty good. Like, it wasn't amazing, and I do prefer that 2D animation myself, but could be that we're product of that original movie and of our time.
Because we're old? Is that what you're saying?
But there were some moments that I liked, too, like with the fur appearance on Pikachu, and a lot of these Pokemon looked amazing. Bulbasaur was, like, near perfect, right? That
with his little hop?
Yeah.
You had to rewind that like twice so you could watch him hopping around.
Hops like a fucking frog. I love it. They nailed it. And I don't remember him doing it quite like a frog in the original movie.
Right.
So that's one thing that they've since kind of recognized throughout the games and throughout the years. But the plot is exactly the same. They added a little bit more dialogue to Mewtwo as far as like, this is why I have these clones. This is why they're superior.
Who am I? Where am I?
He doesn't say, what is my purpose 18 times like in the original. So
but he said, where am I, like 14 times. And I'm like, you're on a deserted island, clearly, Mewtwo.
Why was I created? Mewtwo, no one fucking knows why anyone was made. Like, your purpose is whatever you make of it. Jesus fucking. Can we get him a mentor? A Big Brother program, something? I
just felt. Anyway, continue. Sorry. And then I'll talk about my feelings. I felt like he was just an angsty teenager. Like, his whole point was to be there for the angsty teenagers. To be like, yeah, Mewtwo. And then they go through this whole journey. At the end, they're like, okay, I understand my purpose too, Mewtwo. Like that was his whole purpose. And me is not a teenager anymore. I'm like, ugh, I'm such a parent. I'm like, Mewtwo, you just got to get over yourself.
Yeah.
The world does not revolve around you.
Yeah, some of the subtle changes they made were like in the Team Rocket Viking ship originally. They changed that to like a Lapras thing, which was kind of cool. The Lapras submarine, which they might have had in the anime before. And then in the new one too, the Venusaur, and I remember this, in the first one, it gets knocked out after that Vine Whip, after it gets slammed down. But in this one, it gets up and it attacks again, and that's when the clone uses Energy Ball, which was a newer attack that wasn't in the first generation. They do the same with Blastoise as well. I think that's Skull Bash, or maybe it was Charizard, they have new attacks that weren't in that original movie, which was kind of cool. That these Pokemon put up a little bit more of a fight than in the original version of it.
I remembered so much less of this movie than I thought I did. Because I felt like, I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what happens. And I'm watching and I'm like, oh, when did this happen?
Yeah.
Like, all I really remember was Brother, My Brother.
Yeah, and that wasn't in it. That was one of your stipulations.
I know, that was one of my, but I sang it. So I guess it's okay. I will say something that really bothered me, and I don't, again, remember if this was in the original, but they cut scenes so quickly. Because they did that, I guess, and I won't say it felt rushed, but maybe it felt just disorganized, because they'd be like, okay, here's this shot of Mewtwo, 5 seconds later we're on something else, and then 10 seconds later we're on something after that. And I don't know, maybe that's just what we did in the 90s. I don't remember. But as an adult, like, I was waiting for those longer scenes, those longer takes, so it would draw it out a little bit more and you could really feel the emotion. Like when Pikachu's crying over Ash and you're just watching him, like, that was so emotional. And I felt like I didn't have that opportunity. Even when the Pokeballs are snatching up Pokemon, it was cutting so fast to all these different things that I didn't have opportunity to be like, no, these Pokemon.
No, you're right. I think that, I don't know why it was so changed as far as the pacing of it. And I don't know if it's because they're trying to make it appeal more to a younger audience, and that's totally fine. But we'll always have the original, right, if you want. And this new one is just fine too, especially if you have Netflix. Might as well give it a fucking watch. They didn't change the plot all that much. They didn't go into detail over them learning the lesson of Pokemon aren't for battling, which they cut out of this remake, so that it wasn't like, oh shit, maybe Pokemon battling is wrong. And they kind of left you with that message in the first movie, but here they made it clear that as long as your Pokemon are your friends, that they'll fight for you, because they're not fighting for you, they're fighting with you, right? That's kind of what they were trying to say.
Okay.
And there's a lot of that they quote unquote fixed in this remake. Like Ash in that original movie, he's kind of an asshole, right? He's complaining about being hungry and he's yelling at Misty. And in this one, he is this modern Ash that we get now in Sun and Moon and in Sword and Shield, where he is more of a positive role model for kids and not like your typical anime teenager from the 90s in which they were jerks.
That's what Mewtwo fills in for us.
Yes. And I do like that Ash still tries to deck Mewtwo, though. I thought they were going to cut that. Like, oh, it's a little more, it's
too violent.
Inciting violence, I guess, for the character. But no, he fucking runs up to Mewtwo and tries to fucking punch the guy. I wish I had fought him. I would have used Toxic, Protect, and slowly taken him down.
The other piece that I didn't like, and I don't even know why, is that dumb Marina watch lady.
Yeah.
Who served no purpose and was the only one with an accent in this whole thing. But maybe she's a character from something else. I don't even know. But anyway, she was there. It was fine. We still got Brock, like, fawning all over the ladies.
Thank God.
And we got Misty being Misty, and Ash, and I was like, my tears were helping heal Ash.
Did you get emotional?
Because I did. I cried. I 100% cried because Pikachu was like electrocuting him, right? And then he kept getting weaker and weaker because he had used up all his thing, but he was still fighting for his friend. And then he started to cry. And then I don't know why it made all the Pokemon cry, but then I was crying too.
Everyone except Brock and Misty and other humans.
None of the humans cried, but all the Pokemon did. And that's what really mattered.
Yeah, I can see how that would have affected you, especially since Pikachu is your favorite. I can imagine if Bulbasaur was standing over, sitting over Ash, and that probably would have gotten me more because I would relate so much to that Bulbasaur, and you relate a lot to Pikachu from Pokemon Yellow.
If you're a fan of the original, I say, yeah, you got Netflix, give it a rewatch. Watch it with your kids. They'd probably enjoy it too. After
watching this remake, do you now want a remake of the Pokemon 2000 movie, or are you like, this was okay, this was fine?
Yeah, if they're going to improve them, because watching this movie, right, and the plot, there's so many ways they could have made it better. And I get that it's a catch-22 because if you don't make it scene by scene, now people are going to be pissed off. But if you make it scene by scene, then people are also pissed off because why didn't you take the opportunity to make it better? The plot itself, and I've always thought it just had so much more that they could have done with it than they actually did. And they could have just, like I said, had those longer scenes, more time to really stretch that out and feel more for these Pokemon and these characters. The 3 other people that came to the castle, I don't even fucking know their names.
Yeah.
I don't know why they were there.
Root,
just
Shell Shocker.
Right. Just to be weird, right? They serve no purpose. The humans really didn't do anything except stand around. Ash did a lot, but I don't know why the other humans weren't running into that like furnace thing to save their Pokemon either.
That's true.
So, yeah, I wish they had changed it and just made it more impactful and made it something that kids enjoyed, but their parents could enjoy too.
Mm-hmm. Since we're talking about Pokemon, and I don't think we covered it at all, Pokemon Day this year, it was the first time they did a Pokemon poll with everyone where you can vote once a day through Google. Huge partnership with Google because you could only do it through them. They name drop them on the website, and then Google had that specific button, and you can scroll through. One Pokemon from every generation ended up being the most popular of that, and then there was one overall popular one out of all of them. I thought it was going to be like tournament style, but they went, nope, here's the results, here's the most popular one, and it was done. Bulbasaur ended up being the 3rd most popular in the starters. So the number 1 was Greninja. I love fucking Greninja. Not my favorite Pokemon, but it is one of my favorites. Number 2 was that trash lizard fucking Charizard. And number 3 was Bulbasaur. Ahead of Squirtle, ahead of Charmander, ahead of Pikachu, ahead of Eevee. Kind of insane. I did not expect Bulbasaur to get that high a ranking, and he did. He was also the 3rd most popular in the Kanto region in Generation 1, behind Gengar of all Pokemon. I'm like, hell yeah, fucking Gengar. And once again, the trash lizard.
So you know why he was so high, right?
Because he is no longer the least popular starter in Generation 1.
And because all you Bulbasaur fans are crazy and like blackmail other people to vote for them instead of their
We
favorite
don't
Pikachu.
blackmail anyone.
You did. You're like, vote for Bulbasaur. Do it. Vote for Bulbasaur. And I was like, I'm going to vote. Pikachu's my favorite. And you're like, you know he's going to win anyway, so
That's
just vote for
true.
Bulbasaur. Yeah, you kept saying that, but that's fine. Pikachu's still the real winner because he's the face of everything.
I'm fucking shocked that Pikachu did not get higher in that ranking, and you didn't really care because you're like, I'm still going to get my Pikachu product. I don't give it. This poll is nothing.
Unlike Bulbasaur fans, I don't need the world to acknowledge that Pikachu's the best because I already know he's the best.
Well, here's the thing. Now that he's the 3rd, right, most popular starter, maybe we'll get like one extra bit of product.
No.
Maybe we'll get one extra thing.
But you might get some Greninja things. I also know why Greninja won. Because his fans are probably super nerds that just voted every single day from multiple computers.
What makes Greninja fans in particular super nerds?
I don't know, because Pikachu didn't win.
I think Greninja is one of those Pokemon where, like, Bulbasaur fans, we're probably in my age range, right? Probably in our 30s or late 20s. But Greninja is one of those Pokemon that kids think is really cool. People my age think. I like Greninja a lot.
I mean, he played a pretty big role in Detective Pikachu, too.
Yeah.
So that kind of brought him to the forefront, I think, of a lot of people's minds.
Well, not only that, but in X and Y, which is arguably probably the best story arc of the Pokemon anime since. And in that, Greninja was his main Pokemon, really. Even ahead of Pikachu, we had Ash Greninja, which that bond was insane between the two. Somehow lost to goddamn Charizard, I think, in the final.
Trash lizard.
Whatever. So that's another thing that I'm sure Greninja fans were like, fuck that if we're going to let Charizard win in that fucking thing. And me as a Bulbasaur fan, I'm glad another fellow frog ended up beating out that Charizard. Surrounded by frogs, you fucking lizard.
Well, I'm happy for you. I'm also happy for me that Pikachu is still the face of the company, but that's fine.
One last thing we comment on this. How poetic is it that Mimikyu got ahead of Pikachu in the poll?
I'm so happy. He finally beat Pikachu. He's probably still not happy about it, but he finally beat Pikachu.
So Scott gave me some insight on that. He said in Japan, Mimikyu is crazy fucking popular.
I believe it. His story is just so tragic and so perfect and just like, I just want to hug him and make him feel happy.
Good on Bulbasaur, good on Mimikyu, and good on Greninja. Hope they do it again next year.
Good on Pikachu.
Anything else that happened with you this week?
Just a busy work week. Last week wasn't great at work, so trying to kind of change things and move forward and be better than we have been. A lot of meetings about the virus and things that can be done. Obviously, in a food and beverage location, we have a lot of opportunity to really do our part, right? To make sure that we're not the ones spreading it or that were destroying any virus that could potentially show up. I did get to take Leo on an adventure on my weekend, which was a lot of fun. There's a little nature preserve not too far from the house. And so we went and we just like walked down this creepy ass boardwalk by ourselves in the middle of the afternoon. And little stinker, he walked like 0.6 miles. This kid walked so far. 0.6 miles down the boardwalk, and then he wanted to be carried 0.6 miles back up the boardwalk. So I carried him back up the boardwalk.
I tire.
Yeah, essentially. I kept putting him down, and he'd be like, duh, and want me to pick him up. And I was fine. So I'm sore already, and I will be more sore tomorrow. But it was cute because they had like a little nature center too, which had tanks with like 5 or 6 different kinds of frogs and some turtles and some snakes. And so he had a really good time. He really enjoyed it.
The pictures you sent, it looked like he had such a good time. And I'm glad he got to see, like, did he get to look at the little baby alligator?
Oh, yeah. There was a little baby alligator like right off the path, and I would have missed it too, but this like older couple was walking towards us, and they're like, hey, there's an alligator right up there if you want to see it. I was like, oh shit, yeah, Leo, come see it. And like he looked at it for a second, but it wasn't moving, so he's like, nah, and like wanted to get down and keep walking. But there's also, so it kind of goes through, I won't really call it swampy land, but there's a lot of water around the boardwalk, but not deep water. So we saw like little fish. We saw a bunch of lizards. There were a bunch of birds. He saw a ladybug at one point and was really fascinated by that. And then, of course, the alligator.
Was the ladybug his favorite out of all of them?
Oh, yeah. He like squat and he watched it for a while. He's like, duh, and like watched it. Oh, he saw Bumblebee too. There was like a giant bumblebee. It was like this
Fuck
big.
That shit.
It was so cool.
Florida
it was
bugs.
buzzing around like, hey guys. And I'm like, hey Bumblebee, thanks for saving our environment.
I think they are the least aggressive though out of like regular bees.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with them, but I will tolerate them. I'll go that far.
Beyond that, I'm in finals week. I have one more test tonight, and then I'm done with school for the semester. I wrote my 2 final papers in one go, then I proofread them, fell asleep in the middle of one of them, sent it in because I did the math and I could essentially get like a 30% on either of them and still pass the course. So I'm like, it's not even worth it. Not even worth it to like bust my ass to maybe make a B in this course. C's get degrees. It's fine.
I like that. C's get degrees.
C's get degrees.
Main upgrade that we both received actually this week. Every 2 years I like to upgrade my phone because by then the apps are so fucking bulky that it sucks the hell out of your battery.
And all the upgrades and yeah.
Yeah, phones, they're kind of a mess after 2 years, especially for someone like me that's got all these, I've got the Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, just putting the podcast everywhere, right? As many places as I can so it gets discovered, and it's obviously helped out throughout the years. But all of those things take up so much of your phone's resources that over time it's going to affect all kinds of things on your phone, weird glitches, batteries, everything. So I got my very first Galaxy phone. I was an HTC guy for years. I love HTC, but this year it doesn't look like they're going to be competing on that level, unfortunately. Ever since they lost those developers to Google, they haven't really been the same company as far as phones go. So I ended up going with the S20, which you ended up getting as well. And it's been, a period of getting used to all of these things, not only moving from HTC to Samsung, but getting all my passwords back in there and figuring out the weird shit that the phone does. Like, it's a small thing, but when I edit pictures that I take, it saves a copy and puts it in a different folder, as opposed to my older phone, which it would just replace the original photo with the new edited version, which is really annoying, and I have to figure it out, and I haven't yet. So there's little quirks like that, but it's cool to see the upgraded camera. So our unboxing videos are going to look a lot nicer when we do them moving forward, because they should theoretically be in 4K now.
Yeah, it's really cool. My phone, the battery was shot on my previous phone. I mean, I tell you all the time, like, I'd pull it off the charger at 7 a.m. and then by 9, I was down to 70%. Like, that's just kind of the state that I was in. So that was kind of annoying because also the charging port wouldn't work. So I couldn't charge it anywhere except at home with the case off. So it's really nice to have this, still, even though I've been with Galaxy for, I think, about 4 phones now, I've had Galaxies. Still a little bit of a learning curve every time you get a new phone. All my stuff transferred really easily because I went from a Galaxy to a Galaxy. And I was telling my dad, it's amazing this process, because years ago, you'd get a new phone and you've lost everything. Like, you're sitting there holding them side by side, punching in numbers. Now I set my two phones next to each other, said, here's the things I want to transfer. It said, come back in 6 minutes. And like, my Wi-Fi passwords are still there. I still have to punch in my passwords for websites and things, but pretty much everything else transferred. My background transferred, etc. So yeah, that was, really, really easy process, but I love it. It's great. It came with a watch too. And so I've been like setting up the watch, and I'm like, I'm going to run now, and I'll probably do it once, and like, that'll be it. But I have high hopes.
Get you back into those marathons, like that 90s one that you were talking about.
There's a 90s 5K. I love the 90s. It's a virtual 5K. So I really just need to do it. But the medal that they show is a Game Boy Color. And it says like, I love the 90s 5K in it. And it looks so cool. But that's the medal from last year. So I click on the website to look at the medal, and it just says coming soon. It doesn't tell me if it's still that one. And if it's that one, I'll buy it in a heartbeat because it's so cool. But I don't want them to have like gotten in legal trouble with Nintendo and they've changed it for this year. And I'm going to spend $40 for this 5K and get a shitty medal.
Right. Or like a generic looking console thing. Right. Or they could easily change it to a Pog. Pog medal, like, with something weird.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, maybe if it was like old Taco Bell colors, like the interior of old Taco Bell, then I would be okay. I'd be okay.
You've got to have the Chihuahua in there.
Oh, please. Yes, that would be so cool.
And as a Mexican American, I'm saying it's cool. Use them. I was actually going to watch those old Taco Bell commercials today, just a compilation, because honestly, I didn't find it offensive. I don't think Speedy Gonzalez is offensive. I grew up in that era where those were the only things that we had. Or Desperado, starring Antonio Banderas, who's not a Mexican, so those things I'm totally fine with.
Right. So I'm holding out hope. I'm going to wait and see what it is. And then once they release what the medal is, then I'll probably go ahead and use my fancy watch for my 5K. It does have a widget that will tell me how stressed I am. And I said, well, this is probably good. So I tried it today and I was very not stressed. But then if you are stressed, like at a certain level, it walks you through breathing exercises. So I was like, this is pretty smart.
There you go. But that, I think, wraps up our podcast for this week and the Brocat block. I do want to say huge thanks if you made it this far in the episode, especially if you're a newer listener that jumped on from, maybe you're from Cup to Cup. We just had one of their hosts on last week, Kevin. And a huge thanks to them as well for putting the last week's episode out there. So if you came over from them, thank you so much for listening. And hopefully you found something in today's episode that you enjoyed and will make you come back next week. And of course, a huge thanks to the rest of the Brocat Corps for being there, for interacting with us, and for supporting the show in whatever way you can.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Ibra Palpichelli.
And I am Aroma Lady Daniel.
Selling your perfume. And Brocat Corps, all will be well.
Did I ever tell you about that Parfum game that came out?
A what?
So it's like a card game that released several years back, and it's called Parfum. And the whole thing is now that I know how it's played, but I was making fun of it. They were talking about how fun it was, like my coworkers, my manager, and they're like, you got to play this. And I'm not really a board gamer, so I was kind of like belittling it a little bit because that's just the way my mind operates. And the way you're supposed to play it is you try to gather materials and ingredients to make the perfume that sells the most at the market. And each character has it. And it's kind of like almost Aladdin style, right? Where you have your little booth and you have your market, and then customers, based on what they're looking for, or that trend, you got to try to get those aromas in there and sell as many as you can and get as much money as you can.
Is this Harvest Moon?
Kind of, I guess.
Okay.
It actually is kind of fun, but I was making fun of it. Like, I in my mind, it came with a little kit, and you go, psst, ooh, what smell is that? And you smell each other, like, and you try to guess. And they were like, that's not what it is. They were getting mad.
Did they lower their voice like that too?
What was that meme you sent about the recycling and guys getting insecure
Oh my
about
god.
it?
So it said like guys in the 1500s and they had like capes and like poofy pants and high heels on. It's like guys in 2020 and it says a lot of men aren't recycling because they feel that it's gay. And I was like, oh my god. And the person who posted on my Facebook is like, is it gay, guys?
Wow.
And they were asking, I mean, they
Because if
like,
it is.
look, no, but like ironically, right?
Oh, okay.
Because it's stupid. And I was like, it's like the most manly thing ever. Please recycle.
Whatever you need to tell yourself.
We're
just
killing
recycle.
we're killing our world. Like, just recycle.